Welcome to a noob's guide to Golgfag Maneater. This is
Golgfag Maneater!
He's a loud, obnoxious, belligerent adventurer who can drink a rhinox's weight in ale and tells fish stories so big they'd make a guppy out of Moby Dick. And now you can play this lovable, grotesque rascal with lore spanning 4 decades who is bar none the most entertaining ogre in Warhammer. In this video, you'll find out who Golgfag Maneater is, a bit of his lore and playstyle information, how to pronounce his name with a silent A, and why he is literal tons of fun in Warhammer 3. He has won countless battles, looted the elves' sacred island of Ulthuan, survived a stroll through the ruins of Skavenblight, guzzled more kegs of Bugman's 5X than most dwarfs have ever seen, and been personally decorated by the Emperor Karl Franz. And those aren't even the exaggerated bits. By the way, the X marks on alcohol actually indicate how many times it's been distilled, meaning Bugman ran his through the still until there was nothing left but alcohol and radiator fluid.
This ain't no 5X whiskey. I can still see.
But as Warhammer's most successful ogre mercenary captain, Golgfag has a gun and will travel. Quite literally, an obese warrior for hire with a strictly negotiable loyalty. He will take any job, kill anybody, and steal anything so long as the price is right. But his services only last as long as the money and ale do, and when he burns through both like Scots on a stag weekend, you could find yourself on the wrong end of an ogre mid-battle. Which end that is up for debate though. Think of him like a mobile wall in a fight, and stick him where you want to cause a blockage. He's got high hit points, high armor, high melee defense, and high blood pressure and cholesterol from a diet that's entirely booze and beef. But so long as he's still upright and fighting off that 8th heart attack, every other ogre around him will fight just that little bit harder. Because you may not like it, but this is what the ideal ogre body looks like. Golgfag got his start in the mercenary business working for a greenskin war boss, in a story so absurd it was adapted into an in-game quest just so you could see it. Instead of sorting out some stunties on his emerald employer's behalf, Golgfag drank all the orcs' booze, ate all their goblins, and sang Living on a Prayer until 3 a.m. because when you're piss drunk there is no substitute for off-key Bon Jovi. You know, Golgfag reached party rock levels of revelry when a greenskin asked him to dial it back in again. Instead of wrapping it up and calling an Uber home, Golgfag ripped off his employer's arm and beat him senseless with it, a move many of us have contemplated but lack the upper body strength to execute. He then took his trophy to the opposing dwarf army to prove he really was switching sides, and then led them back to slaughter everyone in the orc camp for pooping on his party, by eating them and then pooping on their party. As a mercenary, Golgfag was of course paid for his turncoating, but went ahead and looted the dwarf royal treasury anyway. Because a generous dwarf is like Bigfoot, unicorns, and an affordable starter home. Golgfag found this lifestyle suited him and took his show on the road, discovering his favorite foreign food, halflings, a particularly flavorful pocket snack that tastes wonderful with a bit of brown sauce. Golgfag's reputation preceded him though, and when he reached Talea, they were armed with the one weapon that could defeat him: reading. Golgfag's mercenary contracts are a legally binding gameplay mechanic that let you choose who to fight alongside next. The contracts contain exclusivity clauses that
dissolve in situations of force majeure,
and any failure to meet the outlined terms of contract will result in a breach of contract and no liquidated damages will be dispensed. On mutual agreement of completion with a specified time frame, capital suspense, and the contract is nullified to allow further capital adventures.
which is more legalistic jargon than the average ogre has time for. So Golgfag just ate the guy that tried to read it to him, and then ran off with his pay chest anyway. That's why they call him Golgfag Maneater, by the way. He'd been snacking on imperial peasants by the hundreds, but you eat one rich banker, and suddenly the world cares. So now his contracts just say, smash enough stuff and we'll pay you. Which is exactly what you need to do in-game. Rewards for the contracts vary depending on their difficulty, which is determined by how many enemies a client has versus their relative strength. Normally at the game's start, you fight a nearby army right off the bat, but to ease you into the contract system, the game wants you to pick a contract first and choose between these two armies. Is that supposed to be me? Codius Bondemir. And that name sounds like Nathan of the Great Book of Grudges, and I bet that's Okoi. You can't help but wonder what the devs really think of you when you're included as a character whose only purpose is to be killed, chewed up, and pooped out again ad infinitum by every player forever. Did CA need to hit a quota or something by including all of these at once? But at least you can quickly escape this fifth circle of influencer hell by taking aggressive actions against your client's enemies and quickly filling the requirements bar to complete the contract. Give them what they want and you'll gain meat, gold, and sometimes unique items or ancillaries. Though the bigger they are, the harder they can be to satisfy. So remember, if you want more cushion, you'll need to do more pushing. Ending a contract also handily ends wars with any contracted enemies, freeing you up to work for them instead. As in Golgfag's campaign, you can never have true allies, and any friends you make along the way should be thought of as pocket snacks you're just saving for later. And if your next contract seems too far away for this average-weighted American to walk, you can always teleport him to any of the contract giver's cities, as the Mercenary contract system will keep you moving around the map as a horde to raise and sack for meat, which is then used to level his wandering ogre camps. So you'll need the money and the meat to keep your campaign going. Because ogres can be a proper horde faction now! It just took Total War 3 years and a paid DLC to add something that should have been in the game since its launch. But thanks to the rework, ogre camps can now move with your traveling circus at the press of a button. And to boot, they no longer rely on horde growth to improve buildings, and instead require meat for all construction projects, making them cities on the move following an army that truly marches on its stomach. So roam Golgfag around, raiding and sacking for supplies, gorge yourself in a bacchanalia food orgy, and then transfer any leftovers to your camp to improve it further. If you inexplicably find he's lost his appetite and has excess meat for some reason, you can make offerings to the Great Maw, a system of toggleable payments that deduct meat every turn in exchange for benefits. You can find a similar transaction in most late-night truck stops, as ogres throwing their meat into questionable holes isn't confined to fantasy. With all this talk of contracts and looting, you won't be surprised to hear that Golgfag gets extra melee attack against anybody he's on the job against. He's been in this line of business so long, he has an actual skill that just says, been there, done that. Golgfag is as unflappable as a tenured teacher, and no amount of their or your bullshit will stop him pulling his next paycheck. Ogres far and wide now flock to his banner to be part of Golgfag's Maneater's Mercenaries, and you'll gain access to these new units as part of the DLC. To stop others from doing exactly what Golgfag did and chow down on the paymasters, Golgfag now only employs ogre paymasters, as they're much tougher to eat before someone notices. These paymasters drive their ogre comrades into battle by promising more riches if they fight harder, bolstering your front lines with empty promises and middle management leadership abilities. And they only pay out after the battle, so there's less ogres to split the loot between. Sure, paymasters aren't as strong as other ogre lords, but isn't the moral support of an employer who promises to beat you until you work harder just as valuable? I mean, we can't all sit in a corner office tent while a Noblar intern works our abacus. The new ogre hero included in this DLC are called Bruisers. Tasked with keeping other ogres in line, Bruisers provide leadership boosts in battle alongside defensive buffs and resistance to charges. They enforce order in the tribal hierarchy with peer pressure, societal expectations, and threatening to eat anyone who uses big words or spends too much time with Noblars. Shifty, big-nosed, greasy-haired, Adam Driver-looking sexy rodent-faced Noblars, who are actually so dumb they will grab a shield and ride on each other's shoulders and pretend to be a cavalry unit, called Pigback Riders. A new unit you can play with, which is only good because it's a cheap traveling snack that can slow down other better units, either as meat or a meat shield. To pick up their inevitable leftover rotting corpses, ogres also get blood vultures, who get a scavenger buff whenever an enemy or friendly unit dies near them. Also, they fly, because they're birds. And they're the only flying unit in the ogre's roster, because jet engines don't exist in Warhammer, and even if they did, most airlines would still call them too fat to fly. And you can't have a campaign playing as the Golgfag Maneater faction without Golgfag's Maneaters, who are like normal Ogre Maneaters, except better in every way. To be fair, Golgfag's Mercenary company is the most renowned in all Ogredom, so a veteran of his campaigns would be more than worth their salt, as it's quite literally a dog-eat-dog world for these dogs of war. All thanks to Golgfag, which is why you can recruit them at a discount for your armies. Thunder Tusks are the last remnants of a forgotten old world ice age and have the chilly breath to prove it. With a freezing aura and innate ice blast ability, they're living giant battering rams with 2 ogres on their backs with oversized crossbows and even more ice attacks. Think of them like popsicle stone horns you're paying to win with, which is very on theme for ogres and paid DLC power creep. Yetis also hail from the frozen north and the highest mountain peaks, and these ancient, abominable snowmen will run ahead of ogre armies to beat enemies to death with claws, clubs, and any misfit toys they happen to find in their path. But these bumbles do have one weakness.
He sinks!
Also, fire. Yetis are flammable. I mean, everything is flammable if you get it hot enough, but they're like an Eskimo in a greenhouse and do not handle heat well. But they make up for it by having freezing attacks that slow enemies, probably because they look like Blizzard from Primal Rage. Put all this together, and you'll find that Golgfag is the first proper ogre campaign in the game, because Golgfag tickles the same part of your brain that Andre the Giant once did. There's just something fun about watching a big dude who knows he is a big dude do big dude things, like drinking 100 cans of beer in 6 hours, then passing out in a hotel lobby, but because he's so big, nobody could move him. So instead, they put a blanket over him and made guests walk around him. Real ogres are peak dad bod, too full of testosterone and turkey to worry about six-packs, unless it's if there's another one in the cooler. So negotiate with some high-powered white men, sell yourself to the highest bidder, then go out and munch some backsides for money. Just remember, no kissing on the lips, ogres don't brush, and this isn't Pretty Woman, though Golgfag will make a pretty mess of anyone he comes across. And now, so can you, because this has been a Noob's Guide to Golgfag Maneater.